Next up, we have one of the most exciting sessions of the day. We have Mr. Shibasish Sarkar, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of IMAC, and he was also the Group CEO of Reliance Entertainment. And to moderate this fireside chat, we have Rachelle Peterson, the Global Director, Commercial Distribution, CNN International at Warner Media. Rachelle, I request you to fire away. Thank you so very much.
Good morning. Thank you, Vijay, for your kind introduction. I can hear, it's been a strange 2 years, hasn't it? But the OTT world has certainly not stood still. And now that we're at the tail end of the pandemic, how do we see the OTT world in India? And here to answer questions on the advent and consolidation of regional OTT players is industry veteran with over 28 years of experience. We're honored to have you, Mr. Shibasish, former CEO of Reliance Entertainment and currently Chairman and CEO of the newly formed company. Is it IMAC or is it IMAC?
You can say IMAC.
IMAC, okay, great. So let's delve right in. With nearly 500 million internet users in India, it has become the largest driver of digital innovation across the world, and the media industry is thriving. So how is digital innovation changing the OTT landscape in India?
Thank you, Rachelle, for giving your kind introduction and giving me the opportunity to speak on this particular area. It's a very interesting scenario what we have been observing in the country. And there are 2 or 3 parameters which probably will set the today's discussion and the broad head points if we talk about it. The first and foremost parameter when we speak on this particular space, that India is a young country. We have close to 650 million population who are less than 30 years of age. India is a country where data cost is virtually negligible. It's 9 cents per GB. And India is a country which is planning that by 2025, will reach 1 billion consumers with internet connection. Now, when you have these 3 parameters, a young country with virtually zero data cost, 9 cents per GB, and where the internet penetration is expected to reach some 1 billion by 2025, it's not a surprise that the country over a period of last 3 to 4 years is showing significant and a booming growth in the OTT consumption or the streaming content consumption through the OTT streaming platforms. And the growth factor is happening in 2 areas. One, of course, because of the pandemic of last 18-20 months, a significant level of consumers who are at audiences are at home. They have no opportunities to go outside. There was no cinema halls. Exhibition was shut down. So the entire population has that consumption have grown multiple fold. But more importantly, the other parameter which is fueling the next level of growth in the country, and which you have been just touched base, that somewhere India is also like a mini Europe. We have 25, 26 odd languages in which we make content, out of which there are at least 10 languages where we have population between 50 to 100 million. So you think of a country where content comes out of 20 to 25 odd languages, and for every market, every segment, every state, there's an opportunity for growth. So these are the 2 or 3 factors which are fueling the growth of the OTT streaming in the country. And as we see that it is currently anything between 25 to 30% growth we are seeing year on year.
Okay, that's great. Could you delve a little bit into how things are changing and what new players you are seeing? Is there consolidation on the horizon in the Indian OTT market?
So what is happening is that if I look at the journey of this space in the over a period of, I'll say probably last 4 years, 2017, 2016, 2017, we saw the announcements of Amazon, and that was the first large global players which entered the market. And in the last 5 years, last 4 to 5 years, the country has close to 35 to 40 platforms, if we speak as on date. The top 10 platforms are the global platforms. So you have Amazon, you have Netflix, you have Disney Plus, you have Lionsgate, HBO Max already have announced their launch. Apple is the next player. And then you have another 5 to 10 players, which are large broadcaster-driven platform. You have Sony Live, you have Z5, you have Sun Next, etc., etc. And then the last 20 odd platforms comes from the homegrown large players, a mix of the large and the small players. You have players like IMAC Player, which comes from one of the largest India media entertainment company from Times Group. And then every state has their 1 or 2 significant players. So my own impression is that definitely because of the so many languages, and there are at least, as I told you, that there are at least 10 odd languages where you have a population between 50 to 100 million. So at any point of time, I won't be surprised that even if I take 2 players from each of those languages, even if I leave Hindi aside, there is a scope of at least 20, 25 players. But currently we are seeing almost double of that number. So I expect that there has to be some level of consolidation because so many players cannot survive in this particular space. That's the way I'm looking at how the market will probably pan out in next 3 to 5 years.
Right. And so do you think that regional platforms can benefit from content syndication deals?
So I'll give you again some level of data which will be interesting. 3 years back, regional content in terms of the overall content coming out of the country used to be 20% of the market. In the current year, we are looking at almost 50% of the content are from the regional market. So definitely over a period of time, regional players or the growth which will happen in the region will be significantly higher than the mainstream, which is the Hindi. And the reason is at least, it will be known to you as well as known to me, because somewhere this platform has highly democratized the whole environment and it is language agnostic. If somebody asks me what are my base shows, I'll probably say Narcos or Fauda or Money Heist, none of them are English, but I am consuming them by looking at a subtitle. Similarly, if a great story is coming out from a Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam or any of the regional markets of India or in Hindi, and it is going global, people don't determine that in which language it is. Ultimately, it has to be a great story, and it has to reach across to consumer across the globe. So so I'm pretty confident that I feel strongly that the regional growth in the next level is which will fuel the growth in the country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I grew up with subtitles. I grew up in Amsterdam, and that's all we had. We didn't have a lot of local productions. It was all American TV shows and things of that nature. So I fully understand that localization is key, and that you want to branch out and go global. So even for Indian cinema, there is no reason why that cannot go outside of India and go global. So I do understand that. Now, the Indian population may be the second largest in the world, but it's also very fragmented, as you mentioned before, with so many different languages and even more OTT services. So how do you set yourself apart as that local player? What do you need to do in order to maybe branch out? I would like to get your view on this, because you've been such an instrumental person in the Indian OTT world. So
I'll again give here a certain perspective, which will probably give an idea that where this and why we're seeing this significant growth in the India space. If you look at this space, probably last 30 years, or probably the whole streaming growth is probably from last 15 years. I'm talking globally. I remember when in my film, when I used to work as a film producer, I used to sell home videos or videos to Netflix, because there's a video streaming platform in 2005, 2006, 200 pieces, 100 pieces for video rental. And now that's a global giant in the streaming space. So in the last 15, 16 years, we have seen that growth in the North America and in the global space. The North America market is already in a somewhere a lot of cannibalization or reaching to a saturation. So the next level of growth, they don't have an option but to look at either Europe or Asia, because in Africa, you are still not getting the purchasing power. Europe, definitely, you have seen the second level of growth, but the population, the point what you mentioned, is less. So definitely, the next level of valuation or the next level of subscriber has to come from Asia. And the largest economy in the Asian space, if we look at, none of the global players are allowed to operate in China. So it's a no-brainer that you have to then look at the next biggest opportunity, which is a country with 1.3 billion population, with country 9 cents per GB data cost, and with a country where you have 650 million population less than 30 years of age. So the growth what we are seeing in India is not out of choice. I mean, there is no other option but the global players to look at the scenario. But what has started happening in this fragmented market is that while the growth initially was looking at from a population and from the platform and the subscriber point of view, now Indian stories are going global. So it is a reverse situation which has started happening, that with the focus, that first the focus was on localization of content. But to give an example, one of our the first Netflix show in India, Sacred Games, almost 2/3 of the consumption happened outside the country. Last year, we released a film again on Netflix called Jagame Tandiram. It's a Tamil film. It's not even a Hindi film. 50% of the consumption has happened outside the country. So it is very clear that today, if there is a great story which is coming out of the country, that story, because of the language barrier is not there, is going global. So it's a mix of a situation, global players looking at Indian market, Indian storytellers are looking at global market. So that's the fusion where we are. And that's where we pan out. I think I have great hope on the regional growth. And that's probably the next level of growth for not necessarily only from the India point of view, but even from a global point of view.
Right. So I'm moving tact a little bit. At CNN, building a direct relationship with our audience is pretty instrumental. And in fact, it's part of our core business. How do you expect the next generation OTT viewer to behave?
See, I think you have made a very interesting point, is that ultimately this platform or this medium has allowed a storyteller to reach the audience directly, and you need to understand that how the audience is behaving. And while that is important for every kind of storytelling, whether in film or television or appointed viewing or anything, but probably this medium, it has reached a significant importance because it at least has allowed you to reach the consumer directly. In my mind, the next level of the next important phenomena, we are going to see probably is gaming. And the gaming will be going to be a more and more important content for our OTT streaming viewers. We have seen English content, then you have seen multiple growth through the language contents, which is or local content across the globe. But a significant amount of population, if they are young, and if we are getting a 2 hours or 3 hours of that time, a significant of that time will shift from a mobile viewer to these online viewers at the end of the day. So I'm very much confident that the next level of interesting phenomena what we are going to see in the streaming services are probably the online gaming, or it may be an MMOG, or it may be a streaming services. But gaming is the next big level of opportunity, or the next level of importance what we see in this platform scenario. And that's in gaming, probably, as you will understand, that is much more interactive than a content viewing. It will be an interactive space, and it will be very much important to reach your consumer directly and get their feelings right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So what do you think, what kind of influence has social media played on viewer behavior, not just in gaming, but also in sort of, movies and TV series?
It's important because ultimately the audience is you are getting the audience's time on your mobile platform, right? And in that platform, whether you are taking his understanding and the viewership, whether on an app or on a content viewing or on your Twitter or Facebook of the world, so the entire choice or entire pattern or entire liking or disliking. You're basically analyzing that individual's choices and pattern through his or her mobile game. So it's important. Probably sometimes it's a little bit of scary, but the fact of the life is that that's the current world. And you are getting a consumer, you know his preferences, you know his choices, and you have to get that, you have to buy that time. And whatever is the time he is spending on the mobile, and then the different modes are vying for that particular need, whether it's a movie, whether it's a show, whether it's a gaming, or whether it's a news. Everybody is vying for that consumer attention.
Yeah, and we all know that watch time have increased, right, during the pandemic. So how are we going to keep our customers engaged and sort of glued to those screens as the world sort of slowly opens up? So
my view, Rachelle, is that once the world is opening up, and it has already opened up, we have seen in North America, we have seen in Europe, again, Europe, the second, there's a scare of Corona, and etc. In India, or this part of the world has also virtually opened up. Once the world started opening up completely, there will be a significant consumer who will love to go into that outdoor experience. Because as a human behavior, we are tuned to, normal tune is to go out, mix with people, go to your shopping mall, or go to your cinema halls, or go to your concerts of the world. But then the pertinent question is that how do I get his attention, or how do I get her attention for the platforms, or from an OTT streaming point of view? The differentiator will be content. The entirely responsibility will be how good you tell a story, or how do you create a story and make it available so that you can get your audiences back. So if we make great stories on the platform, the audiences will come back and consume them. We can't expect the audience will consume content like the last 18-20 months because they had no other opportunities. But at least we have been able to make them sample global contents and make them habituated to see or consume or look for content. And it is now our responsibility as creators to provide them great stories and great contents to bring them back.
Yeah, I agree. So where do you think OTT market will be, let's say, I don't know, 2, 3, or even 5 years from now?
So, if I look from an Indian perspective, I think the market is growing almost anything between 25 to 30% CAGR year on year. Of course, it started with a low base, but I see that by it is already a $4 billion market size, and probably by 2030, maybe 5 years to 7 years down the line, we can safely assume that it will almost double the market size. The different reports, what are currently circulated at, it shows that by 2030 the market will be actually double. That's what is being expected.
Right. Okay. So when audience is becoming more fragmented, especially with sort of individual viewing behavior driven by personal preference, sort of me time and exclusivity of content, how do you believe the ongoing shift in consumer expectations and algorithms that personalize content is going to play for the streaming platforms?
It's important. If you look at today, that even when a subscription is given either in an Amazon or Netflix of the world, you can profile the multiple user in that particular family, right? And there is enough data or there is enough analytics which is analyzing that whose choice is what, even at a family level. So I think through AI and through the level of data which is available, it is possible to cater to come to the consumer preferences even at an individual level within a family, which is already to some extent. To some extent, it is definitely happening. If you see, at least the platforms with a better UI, like a Netflix or Amazons of the world, it will start throwing up the kind of content which you're used to see. But having said so, I think another level of opportunities or another level of growth, what I can see in the content storytelling, probably content storytelling will also grow into the area of some amount of interactivity. Means at the end of the day, you can, at a consumer choice, you can look at the choice that what are the end story you are looking at it. There will be an interactive medium or interactive opportunities between the consumers and the storytellers. Because it may not be possible in a cinema hall, but it is definitely possible in this platform. Exactly the behavior what we see in gaming, because in gaming the audience is constantly in an interactive mode, and every action or reaction of the audience or the players have a result, and based on which they are getting hooked, more and more hooked. Now, in case of normal content, in case of shows and films, what we currently see on the streaming, we don't have the interactivity mode. We basically throw up stories according to genres and according to preferences and people choice. So I see that probably the next level of at least there can be a scope of opportunity looking at it, that whether it is possible to have interactive storytelling to get the consumer hooked.
Right. A little bit more of a personal question. I'm a serious movie buff. And I would suggest that having your name listed on IMDb as a producer.
Sorry, I missed the last part.
You missed it. Can you hear me?
I missed the last part. If you can just
Okay,
repeat.
that's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, so I'm a serious movie buff, and I would suggest that having your name listed on IMDb as a producer is your greatest accomplishment. But what are you most proud of?
So, frankly, I personally have a different school of theory. So, in my own career, probably I have been associated more than 500 odd films, either as a producer, distributor, exhibitor. But I always take a credit of the group credit with my team. So it gives a lot of high when you have your name attached as a producer in IMDb. That's true. I don't deny that fact. But probably I personally don't belong to that school of thought, and I completely appreciate the people who follow that school of thought. I have no problem in that. I believe that movie making is a very collaborative and collective journey. So I always take credit with my team.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect example of how, as CEO, you're at the forefront of so many fantastic movies. And I want to ask a final question, and I love to ask this question, and it often ends up as my last one. And maybe we have some time for questions from the audience. I'm sure there's loads. But given the title of this session, what is your sort of counterintuitive, half crazy prediction about the next 5 years in our industry?
See, I think the next 5 years, or whether we talk it next 5 years or next 10 years, definitely I mean, if I talk from a platform's perspective, because this is a discussion where we are talking from an OTT streaming as a platform and that perspective, I think the platforms are going to coexist. Whether it is cinema, whether it is television, whether it is OTT streaming, ultimately all what we are trying to do is trying to get a consumer attention, right? And how much time of a consumer we can take. So if there are 24 hours of a consumer and in number multiplied by 7, so many hours in a week, I mean, how much time he or she will spend on shopping, how much time he will spend on schools, education, work front, and finally, how much time of the entertainment we can buy for. I think the whole world or the whole industry is basically looking for getting that consumer attention and hooked to a particular scope. My personal view is that the platforms are going to coexist. We will see growth even in the cinema exhibition, which is an outdoor experience for all practical purpose. At the same point of time, we will see the continuity of great stories coming out and the platforms flourishing. What I do have a doubt, definitely, I think the habit of appointed viewing is going. So the age-old television, where basically consumer has to come back the linear TV at a particular that 8 p.m. I want to see this daily soap. I think that culture is going very fast, and that consumer is also seeing that content through an OTT app at the end through an OTT or streaming. So the habit of appointed viewing will probably go, and television or the linear television will probably be only the only reason it will be relevant is probably because of live sports. So if there are live sports and news, those are the only two segments in the so-called linear television which will continue. But otherwise, content viewing will be either an outdoor experience, which will be either a film or concert or a show of the world, or a play of the world, or Broadways of the world, or it will be an experience inside your drawing room where multiple streaming platforms will vie and give the content for the choice. That's where I see the way it will pan out over a period.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect way to end the session. I don't know, Vijay, if there's any questions from the audience. I don't even know if we have time. I've got no idea how long I took.
Yes, I'm sorry, there are questions, but we're out of time. So
what a shame.
not be able to do it here, but thank you so very much, Mrs. Shibasish and Rachelle. Mr. Shibasish, I'll personally forward the questions that the audience have for you and for Rachelle, and then you could answer them. And once again, Rachelle, my personal thanks. I know you're one of the best in the business. It's so kind of you to take part in the conference and to moderate, Mr. Sarkar. This has been a great experience for us personally, and thank you very much. And of course, Mr. Sarkar, you're one of the big names in the industry. Thank you so very much for accepting our invitation to take part in the conference. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Vijay, and thanks, Rachelle, for this exciting chat. And we'll definitely.
Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Sarkar and Rachelle.